Well, Shabbat Shalom. I just want to welcome everyone to the Sabbath Day conference call. And this is Barbara serving as your host today. And Brother P is here as your co-host. And also, we are inviting our fellowship group to jump in with any comments that they have today on this discussion. And our title is Pentecost in the spring or in the summer? Is there a wheat harvest in the spring? Is there a pilgrimage feast in the third month? Is Pentecost one day after the seventh Sabbath? Is there any new wine available in the spring? I just wanted to go forward today and show some of the reasons that we have learned that Pentecost is a summer feast. And here's what the scripture says about Shavuot, which is the original name.
And you shall count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day that ye brought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths shall be complete, even unto the morrow after the 7th Sabbath shall thee number 50 days. And ye shall offer a new meat offering unto Yahweh.
Okay, so there is evidence to consider. There are 2 parts or 2 counts that must be made before Pentecost can fully come. In addition to the 7 Sabbaths complete, we need to add 50 days, not just add 1 day, for a total of 50 days. And you will see here in verse 16, it said after the 7th Sabbath. And so we're going to go forward and show more evidence. Well, this is what it says here in the Penton Bible.
Some have pointed out that Ad or Od does not mean from, that is the morrow after the 7th Sabbath. But Strong's Hebrew 4480 does. Guess where that word is? Leviticus 23:16. Even unto the morrow, and there's your 4480, after the 7th Sabbath shall ye number 50 days, and you shall offer a new meat offering unto Yahweh. Look at what the Strong says about Hebrew 5707. Whether of space or unto or time, during, while, until, Leviticus 23:16 is about time, not space. So we've been applying the word in the wrong manner all along. The Hebrew actually could be translated while from the morrow after the 7th Sabbath, ye shall number 50 days, and ye shall offer a new meat offering unto Yahweh. The Fenton translation is the only translation that seems to be honest with the Hebrew. And you shall also count for yourselves from the day after the Sabbath that you bring the wave sheaf 7 Sabbaths, they shall be complete. Then after the 7th Sabbath you shall count 50 days, when you shall present a new offering to the ever-living. And that's Leviticus, of course, 23:15-16.
So Leviticus 23 is the passage in question. Remembering a Sabbath complete, 1 week, is a different yardstick in time than a day. And there is 7-week count and a 50-day count. And most readers probably see 7 Sabbaths complete, 7 weeks, and immediately think 49 days. But there are not 49 days in this segment of time. These are scriptural weeks, 6 work days ending with a Sabbath. New moon days are a 3rd category a day, and they do not count against the week. There are at least 3 new moon days in this 7-week count for a total of 52 days, so adding 1 more day to 52 days does not equal 50. So these are the weeks, and they're reckoned on Yah's calendar, not on a Gregorian Roman Catholic calendar. And we know the whole world kept Pentecost here May 31 in 2026. If you read the context of the passage, The 50 days are numbered from the morrow after the seventh Sabbath, not from YHVH. So consider the following calendar. Yah's weeks do not count new moon days. Okay, so you'll see new moon days here in the blue, and new moon days are not counted on this chart. So I'm trying to go forward and show you these charts. And here you'll see the seventh Sabbath completed weeks here would be in the third month. Then you start counting the 50 days. So that ends up with the 29th day of the fourth month. But we have more evidence than this, more proof for you to look at. Here's another example. You can see the seventh Sabbath and then counting 50 days. So why do we need wheat for Shavuot or Pentecost? Why do we need the wheat? Why does the wheat have to be harvested?
Leviticus 23:15 through 17. And you shall count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day that ye brought the sheaf of the wave offering. 7 Sabbaths shall be complete. Even unto the morrow after the 7th Sabbath you shall number 50 days, and you shall offer a new meat offering unto Yahweh. Ye shall bring out of your habitations 2 wave loaves of 2/10 deals, and shall be of fine flour, and they shall be baked with leaven, and they are to be the firstfruits unto Yahweh.
Okay, so we have to have 2 loaves. So can a summer Pentecost be proven by either the historical record or in the natural world? Okay, go ahead, Brother Jonathan.
You know I had to say something. I'm just you're speaking my love language here because I put so much time into this. So the first thing is where a lot of people get hung up is where you were mentioning that it does go further after the 7th Sabbath is complete. But the consensus today with most is it's a 50th day, right? We're only talking about 7 Sabbaths. And then they'll say, oh, and the proof is we got a second witness in Deuteronomy 16, and where you see there something a little different. We're not doing the wave sheaf offering or anything like that. It says when you put the sickle to the grain. Some English translation will render that corn, but it is not corn. It's grain, right? And then you count 7 weeks. And so they say, see, there's only 7 weeks there. And what they don't understand is Deuteronomy is missing the first part. And Deuteronomy overall is basically reiterating what was already said. And most times it is saying very minimal. In other words, it's given the bullet points. In other words, so it's not going verbatim what was said in Leviticus. So the way to understand this is first we got to reconcile that first part, 7 Sabbath complete, and then number 50 days. Well, that clearly takes us beyond spring and out of the reach of you can't, guys. You can today get wheat in the spring, and I've clearly shown it's GMO. They were not doing that in ancient times. And planting time in ancient times was at the equinox, at the beginning of the year in Abib. The barley has been planted for about 60 days at that point when the wheat has been planted. This is why you see in Exodus 9 that the barley is more advanced. So by the time we're doing a wave sheaf offering, which is green barley, it is not golden yet. It's still got about 50 days, guys, right? 7 Sabbaths. So that's when we put the sickle to the grain. And what grain? The barley is harvested at the 50-day mark, folks, not wheat. And we see this in the Talmud where the rabbis 1,000 years after the temple was destroyed were arguing over this point, and they could not reconcile it. You had some that were baking bread out of golden barley, and then you had some who were cutting green wheat and trying to dry it in the sun so they could get fine flour. Both were wrong, right? And by the way, Yah had hidden himself from them, and they were trying to pick up the pieces after the destruction of the temple. He was not having it. He was not revealing this to them, all right? He reserved that to us in the end time, the remnant, to figure this out, because that day's been hidden, folks, since the very, first of all, at Mount Sinai, where they're sinning when Moses comes down. That is Shavuot. But then in the upper room, the exact reverse happens. 3,000 dies, 3,000 are saved, right? At that time, Yah reverses the curse that happened there, but he still concealed that day. And he revealed it to us in the end. Now, when you go through the data and all of the evidence, like a forensic study, you will find the truth there. There's overwhelming evidence that points that that day is not in May. It is further into the year, into the summer. And that fits with nature. It fits with a natural order and with what he said. This people like to interpret things themselves instead of letting the Bible and all the evidence interpret it for you. And so they come away with the wrong answer. And, I think that's part of Yah's plan, is to hide it from people. He only reveals the hidden things to his children. It says that in the Word. So that's what I got to say on that. I'll probably comment a little more as we go. But I was sitting here biting the bit, so to speak, because you guys have already mentioned a couple of really good points. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, I hope you jump back in with more thoughts. And I'm really glad you brought up the Deuteronomy 16, because like Brother Tim brought that up, people are saying, what about Deuteronomy 16? It only talks about 7 Sabbaths, and there's nothing about the 50 days added, where in Leviticus 23 it says that you would, after that, add 50 days. So Deuteronomy makes it confusing. So
yeah, that's my point, and I hear that people, they'll try to use Deuteronomy 16 as the evidence or the second witness that we are interpreting Leviticus 23 wrong, and it's just the opposite. First of all, we shouldn't go to Deuteronomy as the first law of mentions, right? Because it's going to be a little different in Deuteronomy. It's hitting only the bullet points. It's not speaking verbatim. It's only kind of reiterating what was already said. You have to go back to the original mention, which is Leviticus, right? So we have to understand that first before we could understand Deuteronomy. Because if you just go to Deuteronomy 16, you're only going to have 7 weeks. And therefore, you're going to remain, unaware that what you're believing is actually wrong. And again, I think that's by design. I think Yah made it that way because he is a Elohim who hides, folks. That is a fact.
Okay, thank you, Brother Jonathan, for your comments. Let's see, Brother Pete, would you read these things on the right with Nehemiah?
Sure. Nehemiah 12:44. And at that time were some appointed over the chambers, for the treasures, for the offerings, for the firstfruits, and for the tithes, to gather them out of the fields of the cities, the portions of the law for the priests and the Levites. For Judah rejoiced for the priests and for the Levites that waited. Nehemiah 13:5. And he had prepared for him a great chamber, where aforetime they laid the meat offerings, the frankincense, and the vessels, and the tithes of the corn, that is the crop of the season, and the new wine and the oil, which was commanded to be given to the Levites, and the singers, and the porters, and the offerings of the priests. Nehemiah 13:12. And then brought all Judah the tithe of the corn, and the new wine, and the oil unto the treasuries. Nehemiah 13:15. In those days I saw in Judah some treading wine presses on the Sabbath, and bringing in the sheaves, and lading ladening asses, as also wine, grapes, and figs.
So the historical record is here in Nehemiah 12:44. There are only 3 times in the year when Israel was to bring a tithe of first fruits: unleavened bread, Feast of Weeks, and the Feast of Harvest or Tabernacles. Which feast time is the wheat in Nehemiah in reference to? In Nehemiah 13 tells us, Nehemiah 13 tells us that new wine and oil was also offered at this time, which is by default the tithe of Feast of Weeks, the real count to Pentecost, not the Catholic count, because the new wine and oil are summer harvests. Nehemiah 13:15 even records that the sheaves of wheat were being brought in from the fields along with wine and grapes. And in Joel 2:15 through 19 and 2:24, Joel speaks of a time when wheat is still on the threshing floor while new wine and new oil are in the vats. You can also see Haggai 1:10 through 11 or Numbers 18:11 through 12. Early June, the 6th of Sivan, is still the spring of the year. The grapes and olives are summer crops, not spring. And this is an issue that feast keepers who believe Shavuot is in the springtime must resolve. The natural world, it takes more than 50 days to reach maturity for wheat. And now there are some who say that the wheat spoken of for the Feast of Weeks is sown in the fall along with the barley and matures a few weeks after the barley is harvested. And yes, this would permit a wheat harvest on or about the 6th day of the 3rd month. The problem with this theology is that there are too many witnesses placing the wheat harvest late in the 4th month. And this type of contradiction that sets Bereans searching for answers. And the answers are found in both Scripture and in the natural world. In nature, 2 types of wheat. There's winter wheat and spring wheat. And the compelling fact is that there are 2 types of wheat, winter wheat and spring wheat. Okay, go ahead, Brother Jonathan.
You're hitting on a really good point here, and I see this argument, and it's really simply debunked. And we can go to Exodus 9 and see the condition of the grain, the harvest, what's been planted in that hail that came down, the plague. I think it's the 7th, right? If that grain had been planted in the fall, it would have been much more advanced. Matter of fact, I talked to recently somebody from the USDA. I met at a Messianic church, synagogue in up near Jacob, and we talked for a long time. He happened to be an expert on wheat and barley, and I showed him all of this, and he agreed with me. It could not be advanced, or harvested at 50 days because it's not going to be ready. He completely agreed with me on that. Right? So we know the specific grain. It was an emmer, right? It is not advanced in chapter 9. It is just grass because the grain's not destroyed by the hail. So clearly not planted in the fall. It was just planted like 14 days prior, really. And the barley is about 62 days at that point. So it's already got head on it. It's just days from the eventually going to be the wave sheaf offering, right? So we can place, Yah gave us a snapshot of the exact phase of both grains in Exodus 9. So there's no question this is not anything but a spring wheat, more specifically emmer. That's it.
Right, and the verse in Exodus 9:18 to 35, and the plague of hail that destroyed Egypt describes no wheat being up, because in verses 31 to 32, it says the flax was ready to harvest and the barley was near ready. Both crops were a total loss. And when sown, winter wheat very quickly sends up a 4 to 6 inch blade of grass which winters over, and then as the days get longer and warmer, it begins to mature. So the wheat was not destroyed in the plague of the hail because it was not grown up. The Hebrew for this phrase means hidden or in the dark. And then we have the story of Samson. And this is in Scripture too, and I love this because this talks about the time of the wheat, standing in the fields, and also at the same time of the olives and the vineyards for the wine.
Judges 15, 1 through 5. But it came to pass within a while after, in the time of the wheat harvest, that Samson visited his wife with a kid. And he said, I will go into my wife into the chamber. But her father would not suffer him to go in. And her father said, I verily thought that you hast utterly hated her. Therefore I gave her to thy companion. Is not her younger sister fairer than she? Take her, I pray thee, instead of her. And Samson said concerning them, Now shall I be more blameless than the Philistines, though I do them a displeasure. And Samson went and caught 300 foxes and took firebrands and turned tail to tail and put a firebrand in the midst between the two tails. And when he had set the brands on fire, he let them go into the standing corn of the Philistines and burnt up both stalks and also the standing corn with the vineyards and olives.
Okay, and like was mentioned earlier, where it says in the Bible, standing corn, that can be the wheat. And so it begins with, it's at the time of wheat harvest. Yeah, Judges 15, 1 to 5 says that Samson not only destroyed the wheat, but the vineyards and olives as well. So feast keepers might say that this took place at Feast of Weeks, but there are no grapes or olives in early June, the third month on Yah's calendar. Acts 2, 1 to 13 says the disciples were accused of being drunk with new wine after Pentecost had fully come. These men knew that there was new wine available, otherwise there would be no basis for this claim. So Peter doesn't correct their agricultural assessment, but simply says that they were not drunk as supposed. So there was no new wine in early June, since the grapes are over a month from being ready to harvest. But there is new wine at the real time of Pentecost, or Shavuot, the summer feast. Okay, now here is more historical evidence.
In fact, Fenton agrees with Philo, an Israelite man who lived 2,000 years ago. The solemn assembly on the occasion of the festival of the sheaf, having such great privileges, is the prelude to another festival of still greater importance. For from this day, the 15th day is reckoned, making up the sacred number of 7 sevens, with the addition of a unit as a seal to the whole. That's from the works of Philo. Quote, these men assembled at the end of 7 weeks, venerating not only the simple week of 7 days, but also its multiplied power, for they know it to be pure and always virgin, and it is a prelude and a kind of forefeast for the greatest feast, which is a sign to the number 50, the most holy and natural of numbers. Again, from the works of Philo.
So this sounds as if Pentecost is 50 days after wave sheaf, doesn't it? But let's Philo finish this, okay?
Great wave sheaf, greater and greatest, is the great feast spoken of. From this passage, it is clear that at the end of the 7 weeks, there is a greater feast, but the greatest was yet to come, and one assigned to the number 50. Remember that 50-day count? So, does Philo see Pentecost being 50 days from the wave sheaf, or 50 days from the end of the, quote, greater feast, at the end of the 7th week count? Please examine this evidence for yourself.
All right, so this is another example that people like to use as an argument against the 250s. What we need to understand is this is not just about 150. Is there just one Jubilee? No, there's multiple. It's a segment of time. It's a segment of counting by Yah. Now, at the wave sheaf, the priest is given barley that is just ripening, guys. That means it's still got green in it. And by the way, barley was primarily fed to animals. So it's okay to, have a first fruits that's still green, because the harvest is still coming in 50 days, by the way. He's getting the first fruits of it. And by the way, the animals would prefer it green, but they will still eat it when it's golden. And people also ate barley. It was given to the poor people to make bread when wheat was not attainable for them. But primarily it was for animals. Wave sheaf, it's still kind of green, a little bit of, it's starting to turn brown down at the bottom, but the tops are still green. 50 days later, folks, it's exactly like what you see there in that graphic. It's golden. That is a harvest, and it's still a harvest. It's a harvest, but the greater harvest comes 50 days from then. Does that make sense?
So historical records prove that Philo and Fenton agree with nature. They agree with Leviticus 23 and the Sinai account in Exodus 32. And they all agree that the 29th day of the 4th month is Shavuot. And so, yes, nature and scripture tell us that Pentecost, or Shavuot is the real name for it, is a summer feast. And you'll see Yah's feast here. You see the spring feast, and then there is one exactly in the center. It's the summer feast, Pentecost, Shavuot, and then the fall feast. It's not lopsided with 4 on one side and 3 on the other. Any more to add to that, Brother Jonathan, or anybody else here in the group?
Yes. Okay, so let's discuss that exact day historically and applying it to the temple, or Mount Sinai, where the tablets are coming down. It's the very same day. The temple is breached by that point, right? So the end of 4 months going into the 1st of Av. So we're at new moon time. It is hidden. There's a dark moon, right? Both temples, the walls have been breached at that point, and the temple falls days later. So there is no Shavuot at that time. And incidentally, this is what rabbinic Jews do today. Other than keeping the real Shavuot, you know what they celebrate at that point right there? They got something called Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av in 3 weeks of mourning. So it's 3 weeks and 9 days, all mourning. And our feasts are supposed to be joyous times. So what do? They move that day to the 50-day point. That it's not explicit in the Talmud, but you can see them discussing about diminishing joy in the month of Av, and forbidding marriages and cutting your hair and washing yourself and all those things, because we're supposed to be mourning the destruction of the temple, right? No, that's not what the scriptures command. It commands us to count we have to reconcile and count to these days. This is why it's not a certain day every year. Matter of fact, next year, Pentecost is not going to be right where it is today on the Gregorian calendar. It's going to be somewhere else, right? So it has to be calculated, just like the year and just like Pentecost. Passover. All of it's calculated and counted, and every bit of it has to do with the agriculture, not just Shabbat and feast and things like that, but the agriculture is woven into it. Right? So we can't separate that, just like we can't separate the sun and the moon. we will get out of sync with nature and with Yah's plan, right? So this is why it's really important to understand the importance of these agricultural points that we're given in the scriptures, right? And really study what it means. I mean, every bit of it has symbology, and it's loaded with hidden things in there, folks. The imagery, the idioms, all of it is just amazing. So I'm really thankful that you're doing this, Barbara. It's really needed because this, like I said, this day's been hidden for thousands of years, and Yah's revealing it now. And I'm so pleased that people are waking up and seeing the significance to this.
Well, I'm thankful that we can have this discussion today. And to access more information about the Feast of Weeks, Shavuot, you can go to our website, LunarSabbathDay.com, and we have a whole playlist on the count to Pentecost. And there are a few there with Brother Jonathan, and the one he did recently is Rabbinical Count to Pentecost, to show how all that was done, and it's not the true count that's in Scripture. So I want to thank everyone for being here today, and I invite you to go and search out more about the Father's calendar on our website and our YouTube channel.